are organizations actually doing to develop their managers? If you'd like to know the answer to that question, then you're in luck. Because this week at Manager Method, we released our 2025 State of Management Benchmarking Report. We've done research over the last number of months with insights from HR leaders at all different organizations across every industry and every size, from small to very large. And the information that we got was fascinating. Things like, what are organizations doing to focus on their managers and provide training? What matters, and how do organizations tie those to business outcomes, if they do or not? What are organizations doing with AI, and how many managers are actually trying out different AI tactics for leadership development? Well, we have all of those insights in our benchmarking report, and you can get it. We'll include a link here. And this week, we also had a webinar to walk through those and take away those highlights, both taking the insights, adding our input, and giving actions that organizations can take on the heels of those. Again, you can watch the full outputs. But in this video, I wanted to talk about 2 takeaways from those that we heard from actual attendees at that webinar. The first was someone that responded and said, "This webinar made me feel less alone." And we're super glad to hear that. We love hearing all sorts of feedback, but sometimes that feeling can be so real. And whether you're in HR, you're a manager, you're employed, no matter what you're doing in work and in life, you can often feel so alone. You're going through a challenge and you can think, like, nobody understands what this is like. And as a human, no matter what you have going on, nobody can understand exactly what's going on, but often the challenges that you'll face, others at your organization may see those, even if they're in different roles, or those in your role in different organizations. They may have seen that and they may have tips. And so one thing about this benchmarking survey and the webinars that we put on, our goal is to make you realize this is a no-guilt environment. I literally said that in the webinar. That the point of anything is not to shame people. People, if you don't have any manager training or you're not measuring manager effectiveness, that's the reality for so many organizations. And so that's something that we heard by seeing it, people whose organizations aren't as far along in tracking metrics or developing their managers. That's reality for so many organizations. But by you watching this video, your organization attending webinars, or considering what you can do, that is a step that so many don't take. And so knowing, just like you may feel alone, no matter what your role is, but especially if you're in HR and thinking, I wish we could do more for our managers, because based on the data, and we talk about this in the webinar, manager effectiveness isn't just a nice to have. It's not just a check the box, okay. It can be a real driver of business outcomes and make work, have more results get done, have people stay longer, and also feel better even when they leave work for the workday. But so knowing, our benchmarking report and our webinars are to provide that data, but also to remind you, no matter where you are, there are others in those positions. And that's why a lot of the resources that we do at Manager Method are about bringing people together. So organizationally, that may mean individuals watching videos in a resource guide, courses like watching those on their own, but then coming together for discussions. Whether you're a frontline manager, a senior leader, a team member that doesn't have any direct reports, but by having these conversations together. When we have training or our organizations offer training, we help with that. Quickly, we hear from that the exact same sentiment that we got from the webinar today. People saying, our managers, our team members were grateful that we were even offering this, even before we gave anything. They were so happy that they were getting provided this. And just knowing that feeling of loneliness or that you're alone is so real. And so in reading through these and seeing the results, some of that is seeing that validation, that no matter where you are in your role and what you're doing as a manager, you can always take opportunities to do more. And in the webinar, we talk about how you can do that without adding stress or just more hours to your day. Now, the second part of this is the feedback that we got from a number of attendees, because we asked what was most helpful. And we want feedback just like we encourage managers, team members, senior executives, everybody on that organizational ladder to get feedback. We wanted to. What we heard was one of the most helpful things was in the webinar, we talk about translating things like asking for manager training budgets into what we call CFO speak. And no CFO is alike, but what can happen sometimes is if you're in a role, like especially whether you're in HR or you're a manager asking for resources, is you may ask about that in the way you think about it. I'd like manager training, or in HR, we'd like to offer our training to our managers. Okay, because that's actually what you want to provide. But if you phrase it like that, anything you say to a CFO or someone that's going to have to approve the budget, CFO, CEO, anything like that, they often hear cost. Because if you just talk about what you're going to have, or we're going to provide this, 8 hours of training, etc. You talk about in those metrics, people hear that, but they think cost. Okay, that's going to cost us money. That's going to take up time. And so flipping it, and when you're asking for things or you're looking for resources, thinking about the outcomes. In the webinar, we talk about the different research in examples of real research that talk about how developing managers and helping managers know what to do and say and to provide recognition, and also in those difficult conversations of how that has impacts on things like performance, engagement, retention. So thinking about those, so as you're framing things to turn things from, I want to request manager training of this is how much it's going to cost, or anything else like that. Put manager training aside, but to think, if you're looking for that, think about that CFO speak. So these are going to have outcomes. Okay, we're driving this to increase feedback, so we can look to drive performance. Ideally even move the needle 3 to 5% to make that impact on retention and engagement for our teams. And thinking about what you're asking for and how you can tie it to those business outcomes. Because ultimately, that's not just what you want to get approval for, but ultimately what you want to do. Nobody, I promise, if you're not in HR and you're watching this and thinking, really? But no, even in HR, no HR person wants people just to sit through training and move on with life, or no great HR person wants to do that. What they want is to provide people actual tips and tools so that you know what to do and feel more confident in doing your job and improve it and help you work more efficiently and enjoy what you do and have that ripple effect on others. It's those outcomes. So when you focus on outcomes in that request, you're also then focusing on the outcomes that you're actually looking for, whether it's training or resources. And so feel free to watch the webinar. We'd love to have you watch it. Go through the report, and people ask, can we share it? Absolutely. And we'll have a blog talking about some of those takeaways as well, just like we do every week. So I won't be doing a takeaway 30-second video to summarize this, few-minute video summarizing our 1-hour webinar, I promise, but feel free to watch those and share those. But again, just knowing some of those takeaways are, if you ever feel alone with a challenge that you're dealing with at work, there's likely somebody in your organization or your network that's been through it, and giving each other tips is one of the best things that you can do. And also going through things like a report and seeing that where you are, you're likely in the same boat as a lot of others. And that also thinking about what you're trying to do to make work better for yourself, for others, often thinking about in terms of how do those that will approve it think of it. What are business outcomes, and how can I make sense to people completely outside my function can be a game changer. Not just getting approval, but really making it stick.